In this episode, Golden and I discuss The Flash, Season 8, Full Speed Ahead.
The Omega Beam. Full power. The Omega Beam.
Welcome to the Omega Beam number 185. I'm your host, Oren Merton. So the CW is now streaming The Flash, the last remaining Arrowverse show, in its entirety. That means it's time for us to talk about it. So we start spoiler-free and then get into spoilers, so let's go. I am here with Golden to talk about The Flash, Season 8. I'd say this is one of the longest-running shows in the Arrowverse on CW, but it's actually lasted longer than Arrow, so maybe we should be calling it the Flashverse.
Well, he can change the verses around.
That's true. He can do that.
And has done it.
That is true. That is true. So this show has been around a long time. We've talked about it for a lot of the seasons. How do you feel that Season 8 slotted in?
I feel like it's always brought a quality show.
Yeah.
That, there's all the jokes. Well, okay, we don't have a villain, so let's bring back
A reverse Flash again.
I mean, so there's that joke, and I get it, but it still has a lot of meat to it in terms of the characters, the character developments, the characters hitting walls, and how do you get through this? How do you get around it? So I'm still enjoying it. It may not have been my favorite season, but it's still an enjoyable show.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was interesting, they're always trying to both stick to the formula and mix it up at the same time, which is that's not an easy tightrope to walk. So I give them props for continually trying. So this time they decided to start with a 5-part event. You can't really call it a crossover because the shows it would have been crossing over with no longer exist. Supergirl is done, Arrow is done. But they brought in characters from those shows.
And Superman and Lois supposedly aren't really part of this.
Superman and Lois are now in a different reality. So they brought in some characters from the other shows to kind of remind you that this is a extended universe. But it was a 5-part epic called Armageddon, where they brought in a very, very popular sci-fi guest actor, Tony Curran, to play, I believe, Armageddon was the name of the character, or I could have that wrong. And it was interesting. And Despero, there we go. And that 5-part mini-series, if you will, that began the full series, it kind of set the stage for what was going to happen. They brought in other villains.
I mean, you just put Tony Curran in it, and I'm there because I very much enjoyed him. And I can't think of anything that I have seen him in that I haven't enjoyed him in.
Yeah,
he had a major part. He was one of the am I a villain or am I not the villain in Defiance? So right. I mean, just
Doctor Who. Yeah, he's definitely been in a lot of sci-fi fantasy franchises. He always puts in a great performance, and he took what was basically a cardboard cutout character and gave it life and emotion that kind of wasn't on the page. So that's what a good actor can do, and that's what he brought to this. This whole conversation is going to be terribly long, so we're probably going to cut the spoiler-free part about now, unless there's...
just because there's just so much to talk about.
Yeah, so, if you've enjoyed it in the past, the acting, the effects, the music, the polish, the Berlanti formula, it's all there. You're going to like it. There isn't more to say about that in the spoiler-free section. Suffice to say, if you haven't been watching it for the previous 7 seasons, I'm not sure I'd recommend coming in at Season 8. But if you have been enjoying it, then you will enjoy this one too.
Definitely.
Okay, so getting into spoilers. One of the things that they've been doing the last few seasons, and they do this on a lot of the Arrowverse shows, the CW superhero shows, it's not just The Flash, is because they've decided it's a little bit too much to have one big bad go for 20 episodes. They've been kind of having the big bad of the moment. And so Armageddon, the first 5, Despero was kind of the villain with a conscience. And then that kind of leads into what we find out is the negative forces instead of the positive forces. And that brings in Reverse Flash again because they need an avatar of the negative speed and all this other stuff. And I have to say, first of all, I consider it kind of lazy that they're continually bringing the Reverse Flash in, who keeps dying. He's died in.
But it was nice to see Thawne in a positive light for this.
Oh yeah, it was the actor who played Thawne. I thought in the couple episodes that he was there, he was great, and he had actually played a positive Thawne in his last appearance in Legends of Tomorrow as well.
Yes.
Which I thought was great. I thought, okay, you're doing something different with the character, and I appreciate that. But in general, I think continually bringing back the Reverse Flash, it's lazy. So that I wasn't particularly crazy with. I thought the idea of the negative forces to counteract the positive forces, it was interesting, but it wasn't my favorite villain of the series or anything. But like you had said in the spoiler-free section, the joy of this show is watching the main characters who you've grown to know and love interact with each other and overcome their weaknesses. That's where this show is at. The villains are there to create challenge, and sometimes the challenges they create are great, sometimes they're not. But it's really about the characters that we know and love. And, it's been said repeatedly that Grant Gustin truly inhabits this role. He's wonderful as the Flash. And Barry Allen himself is a wonderful character. And for those of you who watch the Implicitly Pretentious on YouTube, he has this channel where he actually goes into these fun little superhero things, but academically and philosophically. And he talks about the DC animated universe Flash, where interestingly Barry Allen was voice acted by Michael Rosenbaum, who in the live action Smallville show was Lex Luthor. Mm-hmm. But how that is kind of the canonic happy-go-lucky, just purely love of people, good character. I think that Barry Allen in the TV show is as close as we get to that. And like you said, it takes a village. It's not just Barry Allen. It is the fact that he has an assembled crew, a team around him of people who keep him on the straight and narrow, who help him when he's down, who are there for him. And I believe the next season, season 9, CW has said this is the last season. So this show is definitely going out on its own terms, which is good. I like it when shows do that. Season 8, we'll have to see when season 9 begins if like the seeds of final season were planted in season 8. But since this was their own decision, they certainly had the time and the ability to do so if they wanted to. And I like that. I like when they're allowed to see end on their own. Yeah, they're allowed to kind of tell their story from beginning to end.
Yeah, I know I've talked with some people that they're like, but did that show have an end?
Right.
If it doesn't have an end, I don't want to start watching it.
Right, because you just get sad. You just be like, well, you left all these threads hanging. Now what?
I mean, you knew, and I didn't know that Lock and Key had an end. Mm-hmm. And I finished watching it, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is over.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, I think that one went out very well.
Yeah.
And I hope that they do the same thing with The Flash.
Right. I hope so too, and I think that they certainly have enough time to do it. I think there's a lot of talent. One of my favorite characters on the show is Joe West, the father of Iris West and the father-in-law of Barry Allen. And he is technically left. He is actually starting a new show on NBC. However, he did pledge to return for X number of season 9 to finish it all out. So I think we've reached the point where the actors on the and Cisco had already left mid-season. I think we'd kind of reached him. Yeah, and I think we'd kind of we'd reached that point where the actors who'd been on the show and had given it their all for so long had pretty much reached that point where it was time for something new. And so I think they'd started, Tom Cavanaugh had basically left from being a every episode regular to just a guest star.
Every episode regular, but he was
still there in like every other
character
episode.
every single season.
Yeah.
I think what makes this season a little apart from the others is that usually there's a nice long thread going through.
Right.
And I think with this one, it was a little bit more, I don't want to say chaotic. It's just there was a lot more happening. There were a lot more storylines.
Right.
Than we're used to seeing in a season of Flash.
Right. And that goes back to what I was saying. I wonder if some of the reason for that was they wanted to pay those off in season 9 as they're wrapping up the show.
Maybe.
And maybe. We won't know till we get there. But overall, I think, in a way, it's kind of damning with faint praise to say this season was great and I'm so glad the show is ending. But I do think that having the foresight to leave before you've worn out your welcome is smart. And so I was kind of because they announced it, and at first it wasn't clear if Flash was going to be renewed, but I'd already been hearing that they were just wanted to wrap it up. So I think that some of the chaos, like you said, some of the fact that the villains may not have been as creative as they were in some other seasons. I think a lot of that may have had to do with the fact that they were they were beginning the process of winding down.
Well, it was interesting with the negative Speed Force, because you didn't actually know where it was going.
Yeah.
You didn't know what was going on with Iris. So there was still a lot of mystery going through, but I think I'd still like to be able to have some clues to figure out what's going on.
Right. Yeah, we'll see. One of the things they kept bringing back this season is Barry Allen and Iris West's adult children. And as much as they may tease that one or the other or both are going to die, you know that as long as their adult children still exist, they had to live long enough to have their kids, and they haven't yet in the series.
Unless it hasn't caught up with the future.
So, there's definitely, one of the things about, I think, these shows is they always have to work around the fact that you pretty much know they're never going to kill their lead. So how do you give it stakes? And I think they do a pretty decent job. Like they did have some major characters. Frost.
Well, you can kill the lead because, you
just bring them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just bring them back. But yeah, so, they did remove one of the Team Flash ancillary heroes, Frost, aka Killer Frost. And that created sort of a subplot, Danielle Pennebaker's character.
Wanting to bring her back?
Yeah. So we'll have to see where that goes, and that's obviously going to play off next season because the finale ended with a big reveal that something happened. We don't know what. We have to wait till next season. So, they're trying to draw people into next season, and a lot of, I think, this is going to pay off. But in general, I think if you have been following this show, there have been seasons. I thought this show was probably at the height of its power from maybe seasons 2 through 5. And I think season 6, I was not entirely thrilled with some of the plot, though I was thrilled with the characters. Same for season 7. I think season 8, like you said, a little bit more chaotic, but at the same time, I think it tried to tell more story, and I give them credit for that. And I am really looking forward to season 9. I think that this team, and I mean creative team, writers, producers, etc., I think they have it in them to really stick the landing. Supergirl stuck the landing. I think Arrow did not stick the landing, but Supergirl did stick the landing. I think they can do it. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/185. If you like this show, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your reviews help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. The Omega Beam. Full stop.